Welcome to the GOfermentor weekly winery show. We talk about winemaking, the GOfermentor, and then whatever else interesting about wine. And you can see from the last episode, we have relocated our studio to Bolivia. No, not really. It's live from Far Hills, New Jersey. Anyway, I know that we're all under some stress with difficult times, but I thought that it would be nice to talk about something else, distract your mind a little bit, think about winemaking again, because you know the grapes are going to come and they don't really wait for anybody. So I'm going to talk about some ideas today, but we made a little change from the format in our last episode, and that was to kind of do a little preamble for a few minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes, and give people who are tuning in a little late a chance to get on board before we go on to today's topic. And the topic today is actually going to be how to make wine with very few people. And it's really kind of a consequence of our GOfermentor winemaking technology. But what I can talk to you about a little bit today is, also by the way, today is April 15th, and I think there is one silver lining in all this. I think this is the first April 15th in living memory that you don't have to pay any taxes. The government has seen fit to delay that to the indefinite future, so that's one good news. Anyway, I thought that while we're waiting to get the show running, I would like to talk to you about a book that I've been reading and I think that you may be interested in. It's called The Red Wine Diet by Roger Corder. And Roger Corder is a professor of experimental therapeutics in England, and he's written a lot of books about health and diet and red wine, and he's been very intrigued by the idea of the French paradox, how the French drink so much red wine and yet they have very little heart disease and very little diabetes. And so this book goes into the whole story that it's the procyanidins that are in the seeds and skin of the grape as a giant source of these compounds that reduce diabetes, that lower heart disease, dementia, and actually result in longevity. So I would highly recommend you get this book. It's on Amazon or some other bookstores you like. And I actually read it on the beach over Christmas. And my wife was there with me and she was drinking some white wine. And she looked over and said, "So what did it say about white wine?" And I said, "Well, it says that white wine is completely useless. You might as well drink fruit juice for all it's worth. Because all these compounds only come from the skins and the seeds. So the white wine is obviously pressed before fermentation, and so there's no contact with these seeds. And it turns out, according to Roger, that these procyanidins are only extracted at ethanol levels more than 6%. So really, you have to be into the fermentation to extract these compounds. Now we're going to try to experiment this year. We are going to be getting some grapes from Chile, some Sauvignon Blanc, and we are going to ferment part of them with skin, kind of old school French style. Go to about 6-7% ethanol and then press them. And run a control that's done the same way, but press in the beginning and conventional processing. And I'm going to try to see if we can get some analysis of the procyanidins and see if we actually can make something interesting here. So anyway, I'd like to start now with the show. So our topic today is going to be running a winery with minimal staff. Okay, so hopefully you can see me in the corner here, and so let's get started. Okay, let's face it, running a winery takes a lot of manpower and time, and mainly it's the cleaning and the prep. There's also destemming, which is labor intensive. There's punch downs, which done in the conventional way is odd hours and has to be done on a regular basis. The pressing is a mess, mainly because of the cleaning of the press, before pressing, after pressing, and then you have to scoop up the pumice, scrape it out, get it out of there, and of course the issues with racking, topping off, leakage, and so forth. So people underestimate the amount of people it actually takes to run a winery, even a small winery. So as you know, it's winemaking, 90% janitorial and 10% winemaking. But it doesn't have to be like that. I think that we worked on our process to make winemaking less intensive because we didn't have anybody. So our winemaking became 10% janitorial and 90% winemaking. But there was an odd change that happened in this, one consequence rather, that we now require so little time to make wine that we have most of our time just sitting around drinking wine in the vineyard. So also, in a more serious and relevant topic, in the time of COVID-19, we are shelter in place. We are supposed to reduce social distancing and gatherings. And so actually some of the labor reducing features of the GOfermentor for winemaking now has new benefits. For example, the automation can reduce labor. You don't need a large number of people in one area. You can operate a winery with social distancing. You can have few employees further apart. For the owners and the employees, there's less risk because you're in contact with less people in a confined space. And last but not least, many wineries are family-run, small farm wineries, and even if the government were to restrict employees from coming to work, they could even operate in a shutdown with just using family and people who are in the close neighborhood. So let's look at winery operations. You've got grape preparation, which is destemming, inspection, and loading the macro bins or tanks or what have you. There's a fermentation part of it, which involves punch down, sampling, temperature control. There's obviously the pressing, which is the most tedious operation, pressing the wine out, cleaning up the pumice and so on. And then of course the racking, top off barrels and so forth. Again, cleaning. So let's look at the GOfermentor and how our process runs. Typically it goes from a destem into a pump into the liner, and it's done via a hose. And typically if you were to destem, you are going to need two people. You need some people to put the grapes in the stemmer. It can then be pumped into the system pretty much by itself. If you use a GOfermentor, you can use, and you have a pump with a destemmer, or you have some kind of a must pump, then you can really collect about a ton in 1 hour of operation, which is the capacity of the unit. And that takes about two people, one ton, 1 hour, and that takes care of your preparation. Now, there are some ways to make that even less. You can do some labor saving tips. For example, you may want to consider buying destem grapes. These are machine harvested grapes, and so they can be just pumped into the GOfermentor liner. You need some kind of a must pump that can pump grapes into the liner, but if you don't have a pump, there is a procedure on our website that you can cut a hole in a certain section of the GOfermentor liner and actually dump the destem grapes in by hand, and then close this cut back up again. Now, you could think of doing it with whole cluster, but the yield is quite much less. So, but you can certainly use these stem grapes hand dumped into the machine. And again, one person can dump a ton or so in 30 minutes or an hour. It's not a difficult process. The other thing you might want to consider, and we've done this, is have the vineyard destem the grapes. So you're buying your grapes from a vineyard located 20, 30, 40 miles away, ship them the GOfermentor in its container, the Go base. Have them destem and fill it, and then truck it back in. So now they can use their pick labor to destem it and fill it, and these Go bases are certified for road transport, so there's no problem bringing it back to you full of grapes. You then add your yeast and other ingredients, and you're off and running. Maybe one person required. Fermentation, the GOfermentor, as you know, there's no cleaning, which is the main work in prep. It takes a person maybe 10 minutes to throw the liner into there and clip it up and put the controller on. Our punch is automatic. There's no effort involved. You don't have to be there. You can set the punch up for the next 14 days to occur every 3 hours or 4 hours, and the machine will take care of it. Our temperature control is worry-free. Use a cooling plate, connect your coolant, set your temperature. It will take care of temperature control. Sampling is very simple. It takes a few minutes to take a sample out of the system. It's already separated from the skins and seeds, so your sample is ready for analysis. And now we've actually improved our app so that you can monitor multiple units from your smartphone. You can do it from anywhere in the world because it uses the cloud to connect. And so you really can run the fermentation operation with one person and many, many pieces of equipment. Now notice in our fermenter over there, it's only watched by 2 poodles, if you look at it over there. So in fact, ours is basically peopleless. I put the 2 dogs in charge of watching the system. And you can see how they're nicely puffed up with the CO2 coming out, dog watching, beautiful. So we come to pressing, the most dirty and difficult part of the process. In our system, the setup is very simple. You put the press tube into the bag, connect it to a pump, a wine pump, connect the other end to a collection bag. It takes about 10 minutes. You run the pump, we get the free run out. Now you set up the press to go in automatic cycle. So it inflates, it then deflates, so let the pumice relax a little bit, then it does it again. And you can determine the dryness of pumice you want. You can do 3 cycles, it takes about 2 hours. You can do 1 cycle, but essentially it's automatic. You set it up, go have a glass of wine, come back in 2 hours, and you have pumice in one bag, and you have the wine in the other. Now, the other nice thing about that is that your pumice is already packaged. You hoist it out, put it on a skid or forklift, and get rid of it. No handling, no mess, no cleanup. Put a new liner in the fermenter, you're ready to go. Now we come to racking, and this might not be so obvious, but it's very labor intensive. The cleaning, for example, it's just endless, and you always need to make sure that your receiving vessels are clean. Barrels are clean. You have a top-off issue. Tanks not full to the top. You have a variable seal, but they always leak. Your barrels have to be cleaned. They leak. It's also risky overall. You always worry about poor sanitation, especially if you are limited in the number of people. Then there is a inclination to take shortcuts, not do a completely good cleaning. There's issues of leakage. You clean your barrel, you do everything right, you test it, you put it up on the rack, you fill it up with wine, it leaks. Okay? There's always a risk of oxidation. If it's not topped off or the barrel has some headspace, you're going to oxidize your wine. And finally, there is really no good way of storing small quantities. You end up with 5 gallons, 15 gallons, 20 gallons of leftover wine. Now, obviously, the barrel is too big for this, and you end up putting it in what we call breakdown cooperage, which is all kinds of bottles of different sizes to make sure that each one is topped off. And this is extra work. It's a lot of work to keep track of these things, to sample them, to fill them. And so we can get past all this labor-intensive work by going to the smart barrel, which complements our fermentation equipment. So here, again, the same overall concept. We use single-use liners. These are filled, and then the headspace is vacuumed out. So there's no topping ever. If you take any material out or sampling, you go to our patented dip tube. You see a picture on the right side. So this ensures that when wine is pumped out, no air can enter into the system. We have 2 formats. There's a 60-gallon smart barrel format, which is designed more for barrels and drums. And then we have a 330-gallon format, which is designed for IBCs, macro bins, and go bases. But this operation with the smart barrel tube and a wine pump is a one-person operation. You can fill them, you can drain them, you can sample them. You don't need to really have a lot of effort to make sure that your racking is safe. And again, safe, guaranteed clean. It's a single-use liner. There's no leakage. It's brand new. There's no oxidation because it's basically headspace free, and you can store partial volumes. Because say you had 60 gallons in a 60-gallon smart barrel bag. You took out 25 gallons. You had 30 gallons left, 35 gallons left. It doesn't matter. The headspace shrunk down with it. So that wine can keep in there for years. Now we actually sell these in 2 different plastics. One is oxygen permeable and is used for micro-oxygenation of young red wine. And then we have a second one, which is more like bag-in-a-box materials, which are designed for really months or years of storage. And you can do the usual things. You can oak, you can add things in, and so forth. So here's a quick picture of one of our customers. This is the Village Vintner in Chicago, or just outside Chicago. He's one of our oldest customers. Not in age, I mean the longest time we've had a customer. He has 12 GOfermentors at this point, and this is a picture of me actually in his facility taken last year. He did 100,000 pounds of grapes last year using these 12 machines. He has no other fermentation equipment, and it's run by himself his son who helps him here and there, and then he gets two people during the time he de-stems to help handle the pick baskets and so forth. But other than that, it's all done in GOfermentors. He has his fetish that he likes to age in real oak barrels. So he has his barrels in the background, but one day we'll convince him of the folly of his ways and go to bag storage. Here's another nice shot of his facility. You can see the racks of barrels. Our machines are in the front. And again, this is nothing but a kind of warehouse space in a strip mall. Like an industrial strip mall, and once the fermentation is complete, he just folds up all these all these GOfermentors, and they just are put away to the next season. So again, thank you very much for watching. I hope these winery chat things are interesting and you learned something. You may post your questions on live chat if you are signed into YouTube, or you can actually send them via text. I'll put up another screen in a minute, and there's a text a number, you can text a question in. So I'll be here for about 5-10 minutes. If there are no questions, then I'll continue drinking my glass of wine and get down to lunch. It's about 12:30 here on the East Coast. So anyway, if there are questions, please go ahead. There's usually a little delay in the system. It's one of YouTube's features, so that people don't do silly things on live shows. But you know, you've seen the background here. This actually is Bolivia, and surprisingly, we have a lot of equipment in Bolivia. Bolivia, in my opinion, is something like what Peru was, 20 years ago. It was all potato fields, and now have become essentially vineyard land. It's perfect. It's virgin land, 2,000 feet up, perfect for growing grapes. Okay, I do have a question from somebody. How do you pull a vacuum? If you go to the website, there's in much detail, but we sell a small aspirator. It's a little cordless device that you clip onto the smart barrel dip tube. And essentially, it sucks out any air, and when it hits the wine, it'll collect the wine too for a sample, but it will shut off. So you can use it to actually remove any headspace gas from the liner. And this happens when you fill the liner, you will entrain some air in the system which you want to remove. Also, sometimes you get a secondary fermentation in the rack bag. And so you might get a malolactic fermentation, get some gas coming out. And again, you can use the aspirator to pull this gas out. Now, this racking, we have about 20-25 barrels, and we have about another 20 or odd IBC type containers that we store our wine in. And we do our monitoring once every Tuesday. So it takes about an hour to do all this. You go around, you inspect them, we take some samples, and we also make sure that any headspace that's built up is vacuumed out with an aspirator. So you need one aspirator for your whole facility. You just take it from smart barrel to smart barrel. And since it always only sucks outwards, it never contaminates the wine. It's not like a wine thief, but you dip the wine thief from one barrel to another. If you have an infected barrel with Brettanomyces, you're going to propagate it from barrel to barrel. But in our system, nothing ever goes in. It's only sucked out. So thank you for that question. So going back to our experience in Bolivia, a lot of these potato fields are being converted to these vineyards. And the labor is cheap, but there is almost no winemaking expertise. So it's become a very interesting place for us to establish a GOfermentor because it doesn't need a lot of skill to operate the machine. You need obviously winemaking skills, but one winemaker can go around to all these vineyards and tell them what yeast to use and how to do some conditions, but they don't need really specialists to run the fermentation, press it, and then do the racking. So we actually have a distributor in Bolivia, and we're going to probably expand that operation into Chile and Argentina, which have more of an established winemaking culture. Very good. So I will conclude this week's show. We'll be here at the same time next week. By the way, these shows are archived on our website, And so if you know someone that wants to see it or is interested, you can watch the old shows. Uh, that's something you can look into doing. The next episode, I'm looking for ideas from everybody, but our next episode is going to focus more on racking, micro-oxygenation, oaking, and things of that nature. And I think you'll find that quite interesting. So very good. Thank you very much, and see you next week.